Executive Director, Lead Network, Chukuma Okenwa, joins me on the news via Zoom from Enugu. Good to have you join us, Chukuma Okenwa.
Yeah, thank you so much. Pleasure.
We've seen how this COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted that early labor experience that a lot of young graduates would have had. Does that underscore the importance of skill acquisition, especially for young graduates?
Very, very, very important. Like our orders say, every youth with a skill is empowered to employ others. A skillful youth is relevant both in season and out of season. Many persons lost their jobs during the pandemic, and statistics by ILO puts it that 8.7 persons were impacted. 8.7% of individuals were impacted. They lost their jobs. But you can agree with me that supposing those persons, they have like some kind of skills, other technical skills, vocational skills, when they are out of work, when they are out of regular paid jobs, they can actually find something else to do. So that actually establishes the very, very important of having a skill. Every youth should have a skill.
And we've heard so much about using skill acquisition to bridge the gap of unemployment. We see how state governors have taken, some state governors have adopted that in trying to empower young people. But when you look at some of these schemes and these programs, would you say that we are getting it right in terms of how we impact young people with skills?
Honestly, the way I've seen some governments go about it, it's not detailed enough. Or sometimes you could have like a 1 week crash program without provision for apprenticeship. It is one thing to immerse young persons into getting interested in acquiring a skill. It is yet another to actually give them the platform by going through the master-mentee relationship where they can learn practically some of those skills in auto mechanic, in fashion, ranging from all fields, graphic design, web design, and of course, the great potentials of the digital economy, digital entrepreneurship. And as a nation, we're yet to tap into this vast sector that is capable of lifting up a lot of young persons from being job searchers to job creators. So I think we as the state governors are advised to be detailed in their approach into co-opting young persons into skill acquisition. They should also explore the potentials of digital entrepreneurship.
And we also see that the employment rate has fallen globally by about 8%, which is that in itself has taken a toll on global employment. Not to think about just Nigeria here, where the figure is even way higher than that. You talked about details in this skill acquisition processes and programs are not detailed enough. What should be the priority in terms of impacting skills to young people?
The priority, of course, we must understand is that every skill that have no commercial value is not worth the essence. Every young person that is acquiring skill should be much details to the point that people don't give you job because they love you, because they are family, because they are friends, but because they can have real value for their money. Money is what people should give you in exchange of the values that you give to them. Some young persons can come claiming, oh, I've learned how to bake cake, but nobody, not even family and friends, can trust them with a 10th year anniversary cake, because when you do that and gauge the level of the cake, you're sure that the person did not get it right. So that is why, if the state governments are embarking on such program, it should be that when I want to pay a young person to do a job, to provide services, I am giving the person based on competence, not because I want to help a young Nigerian that is unemployed.
So let's also talk about priority in terms of the enabling environment, because most times what we see here is, oh, there is a program, whether by the private sector or even just state governors, there is a program for skill acquisition. And then, there is a sewing machine, there is sometimes makeup kits, and that's what we regard. Sometimes even keke napep is regarded as, empowerment, that's the tricycle. But people experts keep saying that, look, no matter how much you impact skills, without the enabling environment and infrastructure in place, we're always going to have this issue of unemployment where, in no distant time, some of these businesses will close down.
Well, I want to say there's a difference between an industrial economy and a high-paying economy. We can't compare ourselves with developed economies that have that constant power supply and all the rest. Before we get there, every young person should be able to contribute to the economy by having a skill. With that, our GDP can be boosted. Nations move from being an industrial economy to a high-paying economy. So we also imagine a situation where you have all of the enabling environment, where you have all of the rules, the regulations to help businesses to thrive. Every young person should first of all begin to explore, find opportunities that are out there. Government can help. And then with that, many people can actually be emancipated. Despite the hardship, despite the challenges, many young persons still smile to the bank. They are still been able to, amidst all of the challenges, eke out a living for themselves. So I wouldn't want any young person to feel, oh, because the Nigerian economy has not made much progress, that should also affect your own personal opportunities, and potentials to explore. Every young person is a champion, is a star, and should be able to explore.
Absolutely. For those who have the sewing machine, we will always wear clothes. We will always go to salon. We will always, there are a lot of things that we'll always do as long as we're alive. So in those areas, I guess, irrespective of the challenges, there is money to be made. But let's also talk about the startup, because sometimes after they are empowered with these skills, starting up also becomes a challenge. In terms of facilities to start up, loans, moratoriums, are we doing well in that regard?
As a nation, we are not, because of course most of the funds that are accessible, you rarely see one that is single digits. Yes, I'm aware there are some interventions like that. But of course, the ability for many young persons to access that, it's a challenge, it's difficult. But beyond that, young persons that are smarter, they know what to do. And the simple thing to do is that, like, for instance, you are trained in how to make wares, and you don't have all of the money to start. By the time you are done with the training, you can stay with your master. And at that particular time you will serve him, you can raise up money to, get your own sewing machine. People also that learn how, like maybe cinematography, photographer. I see a lot of young persons who can rent cameras and actually use that, make some money and pay back. So nobody really have any excuse to stay unemployed, especially in an economy like ours, where you rarely find stimulus packages. Not like developed economy, where sometimes whether you work or not, you have the government paying in certain funds into your account on monthly basis. In our own case, resilience is advised.
Let's talk about TVTs, which are technical, vocational education and training. What we have here most times are regular universities, and I mean regular where you can take any course. We do not have specialized universities for this vocational training. Do you think that it is time, perhaps, because of this COVID-19 pandemic and what we've seen, that we should start to pay attention more to vocational and technical training?
Honestly, that is the way to go about, and of course, government at all levels is encouraged to, through the body language, demonstrate value for skill, for vocational education, because over time, it does appear that, even like when you talk about government technical colleges, it appears that those that are not too smart are recommended to go in there. Oh, you are not good enough for any other thing, except maybe you want to fix wires, you want to fix phones, and all the rest. We don't place so much value like we place in other forms of conventional learning on technical education. But of course, that is what we need as a third world nation to actually compete. That's what makes us an industrial economy, and we mustn't lose out on that advantage. Government of all levels are encouraged to pay attention to technical education.
And I hope that those who are relevant in this area in terms of the authorities are paying attention to this, especially as the world celebrates the World Youth Skills Day. Thank you so much for talking to us, Executive Director, Lead Network, Chukuma Okenwa.
Yeah, thank you so much.